I get it. You've probably spent hours scrolling through endless lists of gaming laptops, trying to separate the hype from the real deal. You don't want to drop a good chunk of cash on a machine that looks great on paper but ends up choking on a single game, or that you'll have to lug around like a brick. And you're wondering if the FIREBAT 15.3-inch metal Ultrabook actually lives up to the promise of lightweight power for someone who games, studies, and maybe does a little freelance work on the side. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest question most people ask is whether the price makes sense compared with building a desktop or choosing a more conventional gaming laptop. The FIREBAT sits in the mid to high range for portable gaming machines, but unlike a bulkier 17-inch beast, it's designed to fit in a backpack and still look sleek on a coffee shop table. If you're the type who wants to hop between classes, a co-working space, and a friend's house without sacrificing the ability to crank out a decent frame rate in titles like Elden Ring or Valorant, the price starts to feel justified. On the flip side, if you're comfortable staying at a desk all day and already have a decent monitor, a desktop built around a comparable Ryzen processor and a dedicated GPU will usually give you more raw horsepower for the same money. Let's talk about the chassis. The laptop is marketed as thin, lightweight, and powerful, and the reality is pretty close. At about 1.6 kilograms and just under a centimeter thick, it's definitely lighter than the average 15-inch gaming rig you see on YouTube. The all-metal body gives it a premium feel, and the gray finish doesn't scream gamer the way some RGB-covered laptops do. That means you can slide it into a regular backpack without it digging into your shoulders. The trade-off is that the slimmer profile limits how much air can flow over the internals, which becomes noticeable once you push the machine for longer sessions. Now, the display is one of the standout parts. A 2560x1600 resolution on a 15.3-inch panel translates to a crisp 220 ppi, so text is razor-sharp and games look detailed without the need for scaling tricks. The 16:10 aspect ratio gives you a little extra vertical real estate, which is great for productivity. Think coding, spreadsheet work, or reading PDFs without feeling cramped. The IPS panel also boasts anti-glare coating, so you're not squinting when you're in a bright dorm room or a sunlit CAF. Color accuracy is decent out of the box. You won't need a calibration tool for casual gaming or media consumption, though professionals who need exact sRGB coverage might still want an external monitor. Under the hood, the laptop is powered by an AMD Ryzen7 H255 processor clocked up to 4.9 GHz, paired with 32 GB of DDR5 RAM running at 5600 MHz. That combination is more than enough for modern games at 1080p, and the 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD gives you lightning-fast load times. Think under 10 seconds from power on to desktop for most titles. In real-world testing, I found Cyberpunk 2077 at medium settings hovered around 55 FPS, while Fortnite stayed comfortably above 100 FPS on high. Those numbers aren't the absolute top tier you'd expect from a full-blown desktop GPU, but they're respectable for a laptop that doesn't scream gaming from the outside. If you're okay with tweaking graphics settings a notch lower than Ultra, you'll get a smooth experience across most current releases. Heat management is where the design compromises start to show. Because the chassis is thin, the cooling solution relies on a single dual-fan assembly that pushes air through narrow vents. During a 2-hour marathon of Apex Legends, the CPU throttled a bit after the first hour, and the fan spun up to a noticeable whine loud enough that you'd want headphones on if you were in a quiet library. That fan noise is typical for this class of laptop, but it's not something you can ignore if you plan to game late at night in a shared room. The laptop does stay within safe temperature limits around 85 C on the CPU under load, so there's no risk of thermal shutdown, but you'll feel the heat on the palm rests if you rest your hands for long periods. The keyboard feels surprisingly solid for a thin machine. The backlit keys have a shallow travel that's reminiscent of a laptop designed for typing rather than gaming, but the actuation point is crisp enough to register quick taps without feeling mushy. The layout includes a dedicated FN row for brightness and volume shortcuts, which is handy when you're toggling between a study session and a gaming break. However, the absence of a dedicated macro row or per